So why do wings appear after integration? Because the wings are your right and left hemisphere of your brain. And when they raise up, you become the Ak. You begin to fly above all the bullshit, okay? You don't grow wings by escaping the body. You grow wings by fully inhabiting it without fear. That's why monsters disappear. Darkness becomes death. Death, depth. The psyche starts fragmenting. At that point, consciousness is no longer pinned to the ground by survival reflexes. It flies. You're not in that root chakra anymore. You go. So, you fly over the crown chakra. So wings is hemispheric integration. Flight is coherent perception. Ak is the consciousness that has matured past fear. Or said simply, when the two minds become one field, gravity loosens and awareness gains wings. So whether you're talking about Mary Magdalene or Virgin Mary, symbolically Mary represents the integrative feminine principle, the subconscious, the emotional body, the womb, the matrix, the magnetic field that holds opposites without fear, or the moon. You have to integrate this principle. She is the psyche's capacity to contain darkness without rejecting it. That's why Mary holds Christ, remembers what the masculine forgets, integrates rather than conquers. So now let's talk about melanin. On a symbolic conscious level, melanin is darkness that can hold light. Darkness is potential, depth, memory. Light is information, awareness. So melanin becomes the perfect metaphor for a psyche that can absorb intensity without fragmenting. That's why ancient systems associated darkness with wisdom, womb with creation, night with gestation. It's not evil versus good, it's unformed versus formed. That's the black and white checkerboard that the Freemasons like to showcase. The black and white chakras, polarity, but balanced polarity. You need each other. The Trinity and Neo, the red and blue Kachina twins, twin flames, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems. Things come in pairs, in balance. So when consciousness is immature, it splits these. Fears one side, creates monsters. When mature, the black can hold, the white can express, neither dominates. That union is the 13th state. Right hemisphere is intuitive, emotional, imagination. Left hemisphere is linguistic, logic, linear, analytical. That's masculine. Early humans and children mystics are more right dominant. Modern conditioning is left dominant. Awakening is not right brain forever. It is coherence between hemispheres. That coherence stabilizes the psyche, dissolves fear, ends hallucinating monsters, produces calm authority. So chakras is the psyche layers. 13 chakras, the fully integrated consciousness. Mary is the integrative feminine function. Melanin is the capacity to hold intensity. Black and white is the polarity, maturity, and left and right brain is adult consciousness. Nothing had to be defeated, only integrated. The monster was consciousness afraid of itself. But dark means unmanifest, not evil. The dark mother, the Duat, represents the primordial field of potential, the subconscious, preformed space, the womb of consciousness, the unseen matrix that gives rise to light. In Kemetic cosmology, the Duat is not hell, it is the inner cosmos, the place where consciousness is gestated, disassembled, and reassembled. The sun, or consciousness, or awareness, rises from the dark mother. Light does not conquer darkness. Light emerges from it. 3, lower field. Here, she appears as instinct, survival intelligence, gut knowing, fear before it matures. This is the serpent stage. 6, middle field, heart, coherence. Here she appears as love, integration, emotional regulation, compassion that contains polarity. This is the Mother Isis stage, the reassembler. The heart chakra. 3 is the lower chakras under the heart chakra. Then we have 9, the upper chakras, the higher field, the mind, the governor. Here she appears as wisdom, law, order, the one who sets limits so consciousness doesn't fragment. This is the crown, the throne, the Sophia stage. The governor, not the dictator, is one field with different functions, or one consciousness with different functions. Just like water can be ice, liquid, vapor, electricity can be current, field, and light. Same substance, different expressions. The sun is governed by her because consciousness without containment becomes manic, fragments, hallucinates, collapse into fear or ego. The Dark Mother is the container that keeps light sane. That's why Ra descends into the Dawah each night. Christ descends into the tomb. Psyche descends before union, not punishment but regulation. Ra, or conscious awareness, must mature before it stabilizes as Akh, luminous, integrated awareness. And yes, the Dark Mother can feel terrifying until Ra learns her language. That fear is not because she is hostile, but because her language is not verbal, linear, or polite. Ra is the waking solar conscious mind, linear, identity-based, wants clarity, control, and naming. At first, Ra believes light is safety, believes darkness is a threat, and believes knowing is controlling. But that's immature consciousness. The Akh is Ra after initiation. Light that can move through darkness, awareness that does not panic, coherence that does not fragment. So Ankh is not more light. It is light that understands the darkness. That understanding comes only by entering the Dawah. While the Dark Mother can feel scary, it's because she does not speak in words. The Dark Mother, or the subconscious Dawah, the womb field, speaks in images, symbols, sensations, emotions, bodily signals, dreams, instincts, sudden knowing, or memory fragments. To the linear mind, this feels like nightmares, chaos, invasion, loss of control, monsters, and death. Not because she is attacking, but because Ra does not yet know how to listen. Her language versus Ra's language. Ra's language, the conscious mind, is logic, sequence, naming, rules, explanation. The Dark Mother's language is metaphor, parables, poetry, feeling, archetype, compression. Okay? So when Ra enters her world, he experiences fear, images without explanation, emotion without story, meaning without words. He's scared. That mismatch is experienced as terror. A monster is symbolic data that has not been decoded yet. The subconscious does not soften its message. It amplifies until attention is paid. So it uses snakes, shadows, giants, abyss, devouring mouths, many eyes. These are not intensity signals or threats. They mean pay attention, integrate this, you skip something, you're not listening yet. Once Ra learns his symbolic grammar, the monster shrinks, speaks, transforms, or becomes a guide. This is real life as well. You keep going through something, keep going through this same traumatic event in your life. You have to start listening. You have to start seeing what am I trying to show myself? Whether it's leaving a long-term relationship you've been in that's been abusive, your life's not going well, all these unlucky things keep happening. What is this energy trying to show you, okay? Once Ra learns the symbolic grammar, I already said that. The maturation moment, this is key. Ra matures when he realizes darkness is not opposition, it is information. At that moment, fear drops, images stabilize, emotion becomes guidance. The Dawah becomes navigable again. That is when Ra becomes Akh. Light that can travel through the unconscious without fragmenting. Light that can travel through the unconscious without fragmenting. If she spoke gently at first, Ra would ignore her, remain arrogant, remain externalized, never descend. As well as the feminine principle in a relationship. She gets called masculine because she has the what? She has to raise her voice. She has to get out of the softness and the receptive energy. And she has to be loud because she feels like this is the only way that the fearful and egotistical, unintegrated and egotistical Ra can hear her. You see? But then we get called bitches and all this types of shit. But it's like, me being soft and me being sweet, where did that get me? So now, yes, you brought out this side of me. And if you would listen instead of fight me, and if you would just listen to what I am trying to tell you for your growth, because I am holding up a mirror to you, because I know you very well, right? And I can understand you in a way you can't understand yourself. So, if men would listen to the woman instead of just getting defensive, he might learn something from her, okay? So if she spoke gently at first, Ra would ignore her, remain arrogant, remain externalized, never to sin. The fear is the breaking system. It forces humility. She frightens the immature mind so the mature one can be born. Isis represents the integrative feminine intelligence, the part of the psyche that knows how to enter darkness without fragmenting, knows how to reassemble what is broken, does not fear dissolution. She does not crown you with solar consciousness first. She gives you permission and containment to descend. That's the key. The Dot, the Duat, the Bendu, the Black Pearl, and the Pirates of the Caribbean. The point where identity dissolves. Not annihilation, but loss of false structure. That's why the Black Pearl in Pirates of the Caribbean is invisible to normal perception, reachable only through disorientation, captained by those who've already died to ordinary rules. It's an ego-death vessel, not a reward ship. You cannot begin with Ra. Ra is coherent solar conscious authority. If you give that too early, ego inflates, fear spiritualizes, delusion masquerades as enlightenment. That's why ancient systems warned against false light. You don't start with Ra. You earn the stability to hold Ra. The actual initiation order is 1, Kali, ego death, dissolution. Cut off the motherfucking head. This is not violence, it's this deconstruction. What dissolves is rigid identity, control narratives, false safety structures. Psychologically, it's collapse of ego dominance, encounter with unfiltered emotion, loss of certainty. This is why it feels terrifying if unprepared. Number 2, emotional maturity or the weighing of the heart. This is where most people stall. The question is not, are you good? It is, can you feel without being ruled by feeling? The heart is weighed against truth, not morality. If emotion still overwhelms perception, hijacks behavior, distorts reality, you cannot proceed safely. Number 3, Mayat, coherence, inner law. Mayat is not rules imposed from outside. She is inner alignment, proportional response, nervous system regulation, emotional truth plus mental clarity and balance. This is when fear no longer drives action. Love is steady, not reactive. Truth doesn't need defense. Only here does the psyche become reliable. Number 4, Ra or solar consciousness. Now and only now, Ra can rise. At this point, light does not blind. Authority does not inflate ego. Insight does not fragment the psyche. Ra here is illumination without dissociation. Then, number 5, Ankh, or luminous integration. This is not higher, it's whole. The wings start to appear, bilateral integration. The halo begins to appear, coherent awareness field. And the sun, the glow, the stable consciousness starts to appear. Nothing is bypassed, nothing is denied, nothing is feared. Davy Jones represents a psyche that reached power without emotional integration. Symbolically, he felt love, calypso. He could not tolerate the pain of loss. He chose avoidance instead of grief. So what does he do? He cuts out his heart. Emotional dissociation. He locks it away. Repression. He becomes monstrous. Fragmentation. That is a failed weighing of the heart. He didn't fail because he loved. He failed because he refused to feel once love hurt. So yes, Jones never passes Mayat. Power without emotional coherence is corruption. Calypso is the feminine, oceanic, unconscious, the dark mother, the emotional field. Bonding her into a human body means instinct confined, emotion controlled, chaos suppressed instead of integrated. Freeing Calypso is not releasing evil, it's releasing repressed emotional truth back into the system. That's why the storm is violent. Repression always explodes when released. But notice the storm clears. Balance is returned. The sea resets. That's emotional truth restoring equilibrium. The locker is a duat, fragmentation chamber. The locker isn't hell, it's dissociation space, depression, limbo, fragmented psyche. Each character there represents a split off function. The key detail is they can only escape once they cooperate. That's the integration. What is Will Turner's 10-year journey? It's not punishment and it's not romance delay. Will Turner becomes the new Jones, but corrected. Jones tried to escape pain, rejected emotional truth, and then fragmented. Will accepts duty with love intact, hence his name, the Will. Feels grief without collapsing, remains coherent. The 10 years symbolize a full emotional cycle. Literally, today we've entered the 10 year. Maturation through time, repeated descent and return. He ferries souls, emotions, memories, fragments without rejecting them. So, Will's journey is ongoing integration and service without dissociation. Not fixing fragments, but holding them without breaking. Elizabeth can return every 10 years. She represents conscious relational love, anchoring identity and emotional home. Returning every 10 years means love is not abandoned, identity remains coherent, and duty doesn't erase humanity. That's the corrected initiation. Isis does not withhold love, she withdraws support so love can become stable rather than dependent. When consciousness first meets her, it feels held, it feels guided, it feels protected, it feels initiated, it feels great, This is early stage maturation. But if she stayed in constant governance, consciousness would never stabilize by itself. Love would remain externalized. Regulation would be borrowed, not embodied. So the next phase is withdrawal of scaffolding, not abandonment. You have to earn her love. What that actually means. You're not earning affection, you're earning capacity. The test is simple and brutal. Can you hold all her parts? Instinct, emotion, chaos, grief, love, rage, death. Without collapsing, blaming, dissociating, or demanding rescue. That's it. If consciousness fragments, it's not ready. Externalizes, it's not ready. Demands reassurance, it's not ready. Turns love into need, it's not ready. If consciousness remains coherent, stays present with intensity, does not weaponize pain, does not flee darkness, then it is ready. So she steps back so that love is no longer fused with safety. Stability comes from within, and power does not depend on her presence. This is the difference between initiation and embodiment. True union requires autonomy, emotional sovereignty, internal regulation. Only then can alignment be equal, not hierarchical or attachment or dependent. When alignment does return, when consciousness can descend without fear, feel without collapsing, love without clinging, stand without domination, then Isis is no longer mother, rescuer, guide. She becomes partner, equal field, coherent union. You ever been with a guy and you had to play the mother role? Like, you a grown man. I am not your mother. I am your partner. A child must internalize strength, motivation, and regulation, or they will borrow it forever. And borrowing regulation long term does turn into dependency, anxiety, or collapse under pressure. So stepping back is not abandonment. Abandonment feels like disappearance, unpredictability, emotional withdrawal with no inner anchor left behind. Healthy distance feels like consistency without intrusion, presence without control, love without surveillance. The difference is whether the child has internalized the observer. The observer was never meant to vanish. In healthy development, the guide steps back but does not disappear and does not micromanage and does not rescue from every discomfort. Instead, the guide becomes a stable reference point, a known presence, something the child feels, not constantly sees. If motivation always comes from outside, initiative atrophies, confidence becomes conditional, fear of failure increases, separation feels like danger. That's why with my kids, like, even if they fall off a bike, I'm not going to run up to them and immediately coddle them, because you're not supporting their natural resilience that they should have on their own. You're not supporting their independence. If comfort always comes immediately, frustration tolerance never develops, emotional regulation stays external, resilience doesn't form. So the question is, can you shine when I'm not pushing you? Can you stand when I'm not holding you? The goal is internalization, not attachment. Healthy maturation looks like, I'm okay because you're here. Then I'm okay because I carry you inside. Or you taught me enough that I can do this on my own now. Or you gave me the right environment that, I can blossom without your hand helping me in every way. Your hand helping me in every way. I'm okay because I'm okay. At that point, separation doesn't equal loss. Independence doesn't equal rejection. Love doesn't require proximity. That's the moment growth locks in. This mirrors the mythic pattern. Isis, the guide, the parent, initiates, stabilizes, then withdraws active governance. Not because love ended, but because love succeeded. If she stayed hovering, autonomy would never emerge. Sovereignty would never stabilize. A child would confuse love with dependence. So she becomes witness, not manager. At this stage, consciousness has already tasted safety, love, guidance, coherence. So when active holding stops, the immature parts of the psyche interpret it as, you abandoned me, you tricked me, you took love away, this is unfair. That anger is not truth, it's dependency being exposed. It's the moment where the psyche asks, can I generate stability myself, or do I need someone else to do it for me? Why people regress or get stuck, they often do one of the three things: blame the feminine, the God, the process. That was cruel, this is punishment, this love was fake. Try to force reunion prematurely, clinging, spiritual bypassing, obsession, inflation, collapse into bitterness or nihilism. Nothing is real, love isn't real, it was all a lie. All three are refusals to mature. Not evil, not stupid, just unfinished. The critical truth: she is also grace and love. She does not judge, she waits. She does not punish, withdraw affection, keep score, demand suffering. She simply stops compensating. And that feels brutal only to the parts that have not yet learned to stand. If she stepped back in and rescued every time, growth would halt. Sovereignty would never form. Love will remain external. Waiting says, I trust what you're becoming. Judgment says, you failed. She does neither condemnation nor praise. She observes capacity. Feeling anger does not mean someone is rejected forever. It means grief hasn't been metabolized yet. Attachment hasn't reorganized yet. Regulation isn't internal yet. Anger is a signal, not a verdict. What matters is, do they stay present with it, or do they externalize it and harden? If they stay, the anger softens into grief. If they flee, it calcifies into resentment. What passing the stage will look like is not bliss, not constant peace. It looks like sadness without collapse, longing without obsession, love without bargaining, steadiness without reassurance. It's quiet, it's almost boring. And that's how you know it's real. The dark mother Isis subconscious field does not only contain love, softness, reassurance. She also contains doubt, anger, grief, protest, fear. This isn't fair. Why? Because those are honest signals of separation and maturation. If she rejected those emotions, she wouldn't be whole. So when they arise, it doesn't mean you fell out of grace. It means the psyche is metabolizing independence. Self-blame is a danger zone. The most common misinterpretation is, I did something wrong to deserve this distance, this silence, this waiting. That thought creates shame, contraction, collapse, regression. But the truth is simpler and less dramatic. Nothing went wrong. Something is ripening. Knowledge of the process prevents spiritual guilt, emotional self-attack, frantic meaning-making. That's why initiation traditions always taught the map. Waiting does not equal abandonment. Waiting means no interference, no rescue, no punishment, no judgment. It's neutral observation while capacity develops. If someone collapses, the waiting feels cruel. If someone stabilizes, the waiting feels protective. Why timing and cycles matter. These stories use time markers because integration cannot be rushed. Time allows nervous system rewiring, emotional digestion, identity reorganization, repetition without collapse. You can't think your way through the stage. You live through it. 10 years in the Pirates of the Caribbean. 10 years is a full emotional maturation arc. Repeated descent and return, proof of stability over time. Not intensity, but consistency. 40 days and nights in the Bible. 40 always means liminal time, purification, nervous system reset, identity loosening before reformation. Desert wandering, floods, fasting, isolation. 40 is not about suffering, it's about repatterning. Why cycles repeat if rushed. If someone tries to force reunion, demand reassurance, bypass waiting, collapse into blame, the cycle doesn't punish them, it simply restarts. Reincarnation, right? Same lesson, different scenery. At first, the connection feels electric, intoxicating, urgent, destabilizing. That phase is activation, not completion. It wakes dormant parts of the psyche, but if it stayed like that, it would be addictive, dysregulating, trauma-bonded, adrenaline-driven. That's not union, that's nervous system fireworks. That's overstimulation. We don't know what it feels like to just be baseline peaceful. We're so used to being overstimulated, especially if you're coming out of a abusive relationship. You have to now relearn what it's like to just be cool, calm, and collected, and not always expect the bomb to go off. You have to heal yourself. It stops being something you wanted. It becomes something you are. When that happens, you're no longer hungry for it. You're no longer proving anything. You're no longer scanning for signs. You're not bargaining with reality. You're available instead of needy. That's why it gets quiet. Why it becomes subtle but obvious. This is the paradox people miss. It's subtle because there's no charge seeking. It's obvious because coherence doesn't hide. It feels like, oh, of course, this fits. Oh, yeah, this isn't dramatic. It's right. Like, this is it. Like, it just feels right. This is who I was meant to be. Like a key sliding into a lock without force. No sparks, no struggle, just alignment. Why it can't be hidden anymore. When it's adrenaline based, it can be secretive, fantasy-driven, compartmentalized. When it's embodied, it shows up in behavior, timing aligns, reality supports it, no story is required. Truth doesn't need intensity to announce itself. It just functions. Adrenaline loves spikes, crashes, demands reassurance, feeds obsession, needs constant stimulation. Integrated love regulates, stabilizes, grounds, frees attention. One consumes you, the other frees you to live. That's how you know it's real. At earlier stages, the Saki says, I will be complete when I meet it. I will be safe when it returns. I will be whole when alignment arrives. That's not wrong, it's immature orientation. At maturity, the Psyche realizes what I'm seeking is a state of being, and I can generate that state. The moment you can hold the love, coherence, steadiness, and self-respect you once projected outward, something profound happens. Longing dissolves, comparison stops, urgency disappears, self-trust stabilizes, not because you gave up, but because you arrive. This isn't ego inflation. I don't need anyone. Emotional armor. It's internal regulation, self-containment, wholeness without isolation. You love yourself the way the state loves you, without clinging, without judgment, without conditions. That's why it feels calm, not loud. Why alignment follows being, not wanting. The field aligns to coherence, not desire. When you are the state, your nervous system signals safety, your behavior reflects clarity, your boundaries are clean, your timing becomes patient. And reality responds naturally, not magically, but mechanically. Like resonance, the state is not perfection, it's capacity. And the capacity is this: loving every part without judgment, without urgency to fix, and without exile. What maturity actually is, it is not being calm all the time, having no anger, fear, or doubt, never regressing, being spiritually above anything. That version is repression wearing spiritual language, but it is allowing anger to exist without acting it out, letting doubt pass without self-attack, giving grief space without drowning in it, letting joy rise without clinging. Nothing gets kicked out of the house. Why this end? Fragmentation. Fragmentation happens when a part says, I'm not allowed, I'm bad, I'm too much, I'll be abandoned if I show up. Love without judgment says, you can be here, you don't run the system, but you're not wrong for existing. That sentence alone heals more than years of force. A relationship is simply two nervous systems and two psyches trying to co-regulate without losing themselves. So whatever is true inside must also be true between. If a principle doesn't work intraphysically, it will fail interpersonally. The shared principles, inner and relational. Love is not perfection. Inner, you don't exile parts for being messy. Relational, you don't require someone to be flawless to be lovable. Health is room to be human. Regulation before understanding. Inner, you don't have to figure out every feeling. Relational, you don't have to resolve everything immediately. Stability comes from not collapsing, not from instant clarity. No chasing, no gripping. Inner, you stop hunting for a state. Relational, you stop hunting for reassurance. Connection flows when neediness exits the system. Autonomy without withdrawal. Inner, parts are allowed without taking over. Relational, partners are free without abandoning each other. This is the sweet spot. Closed but not fused. Space is not rejection. Inner, a quiet phase doesn't mean you failed. Relational distance doesn't automatically mean loss. Mature systems use space to integrate, not to punish. Love that doesn't manage. Inner, you don't micromanage emotions. Relational, you don't parent, rescue, or control. Healthy love says, I trust your capacity. Why unhealthy relationships feel intense. Intensity often signals unintegrated parts seeking regulation. Adrenaline based bonding, fear mistaken for passion. It feels powerful, but it's unstable. It's karmic. Healthy connection feels calm, obvious, boring at first, safe to relax into. That's not lack of chemistry, that's nervous system compatibility. Why intensity gets mistaken for love. Intensity usually comes from unresolved attachment wounds, adrenaline, cortisol, dopamine spikes, fear of loss, longing mixed with hope, unpredictability. That cocktail creates obsession, hyper-focus, emotional highs and crashes, a sense of this must be important, and toxicity. The body reads arousal as meaning, so the psyche says this feels powerful, therefore it must be love, but power does not equal health. What intensity is actually signaling. Most of the time, intensity means a part is trying to be healed. Regulation is being outsourced. Old wounds are being activated. Familiarity It's being mistaken for fate. It's not fake, it's unfinished. That's why it feels consuming instead of nourishing. Why true love feels quieter at first. Real love doesn't spike your nervous system, doesn't make you lose yourself, require constant reassurance, feel urgent or desperate. It is grounding, steady, obvious, safe to exhale in. And because we're conditioned to equate love with drama, this can feel boring, too easy. Where's the spark? But that's just withdrawal from adrenaline. Growth at this stage doesn't arrive as a breakthrough high, a spiritual vision, a relationship climax, a big decision. It arrives as absence. You notice you're not checking anymore, you're not aching anymore, you're not bargaining anymore, you're not bracing anymore, and that's when it hits. Oh, I became the thing. No fireworks, just recognition. It's like, what the fuck? Because your old identity was organized around waiting, hoping, preparing, enduring. And that collapse is a brief moment of disorientation, humor, lightness, like, damn, I really thought something was coming to save me. And instead, yourself showed up. Epiphanies don't happen when the mind strains for them. They happen when integration has already occurred and awareness simply catches up. That's why insights feel sudden, clarity feels obvious, realizations feel like, how did I miss this? Nothing new was added, something old was reorganized. During integration, most of the work is nervous system recalibration, emotional digestion, memory reconsolidation, identity reorganization. And almost none of that is conscious. It's like muscles repairing after training, a wound knitting under a bandage, software updating while the screen looks idle. From the outside and even inside, it looks like nothing is happening, but internally the system is re-encoding itself. So the movie Split, talking to self, it's important. The movie Split is all parts of the self that are quietly integrating during the Osiris moment. And every part plays a role. That's why in DID, one is protective, one deals with sexual energy, etc. And the therapist encourages what? Integration. But they always feel like integration kills them off. The part of the psyche that forms when trauma is so overwhelming that the nervous system must evolve rather than merely cope. So when the beast spares the girl, it's because he recognizes in her the same mark of suffering, the same initiation through pain, which to him signifies strength rather than weakness. That's why his morality feels alien but consistent. The movie is quietly saying that trauma doesn't just fracture the mind, it creates specialists. Okay, come get a drink. I was about to get water, and also I'm scared to take water. One self holds terror, Hedwig. One holds order and control, Patricia. One holds sexuality and confidence. One holds rage. One holds logic. One holds protection. And yes, talking to oneself isn't pathology here, it's internal governance. The psyche negotiating survival across time. The beast emerges when the system believes softness will get them killed again. Biologically and symbolically, he represents adrenaline, cortisol, myofascial armor, also gene expression, and belief crystallized into muscle and bone, hence the superhuman strength. While Dr. Karen Fletcher keeps insisting on integration, not because she wants to erase anyone, but because integration in trauma therapy actually means co-presence, not annihilation. No part dies, no protector is fired, no child is silenced. Instead, the road softened because the system no longer believes danger is permanent. The reason integration feels like death to the parts is because they were literally born to keep Kevin alive. So stepping back feels like extinction. But what the film is hinting is that true integration doesn't kill the beast. It teaches him when to stand down, just as it doesn't erase sexuality, fear, or vigilance, but puts them in conscious relationship. The tragedy is that Kevin never reaches that stage, so the beast becomes the ruling god of the psyche rather than one guardian among many. And that's the quiet genius of Split. It's not asking whether the beast is evil. It's asking what happens when the most traumatized protector is given absolute power, and whether healing is not the destruction of our parts, but the moment they finally realize they no longer have to bleed to be real. What integration actually means is shared awareness plus shared authority. Integration is not erasing parts. silencing protectors, curing the system by domination, forcing everyone into one flat personality. Integration is every part being seen, heard, and respected. No single part having to run the system alone. Leadership becoming collaborative, not authoritarian. The nervous system no longer living in permanent emergency mode. Why it feels like death to some parts. Parts were created during moments when no one else showed up, so they took full control to keep the system alive. To them, stepping back feels like annihilation because in the past, stepping back meant danger. Their identity is fused with survival, but integration doesn't remove their power, it shares it. During integration, the body is slowly learning a new answer. We are not in the original danger anymore. That means the amygdala, the threat detector, fires less often. The vagus nerve starts shifting you out of fight, flight, freeze. Stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline fluctuate unpredictably. The body may feel tired, foggy, heavy, or oddly neutral. This is why integration often feels boring, confusing, or anticlimactic. Your system is standing down from war. I know that's right. And it's literally like war. If you've ever been in an abusive relationship, you're literally at war with the other person, it feels like. And to the nervous system, it's like your body got hit by a truck, you know. So brain networks that were once separate are learning to talk. Trauma creates functional separation, not just emotional ones. During integration, the right brain, emotion, memory, body, and left brain, language, logic, are synchronizing. Memory fragments that were stored without words start linking to meaning. You may suddenly understand things without refilling them intensely. This can show up as sudden clarity with no emotional charge. That's not numbness, that's coherence. The parts are releasing identity, not disappearing. If I don't stay in control, everything falls apart. Integration asks them to loosen that belief. It can feel like grief because parts were once needed. So, what you can do to support, regulate before you analyze. Internal check-ins. Let rest count. So Calypso represents the bound great mother principle, raw emotional oceanic power restrained by contracts, rules, and masculine fear. So when she is finally released, she does not save anyone but unleashes chaos because suppressed emotion and feminine force return first as storms, not peace. And this is why the sea opens into the maelstrom, a literal toroidal vortex where life and death spiral together, forcing all players to choose coherence or annihilation. The green flash and the stars are different phases of the same transformation, not contradictions. And when you read it through comedic, biological, quantum symbolism, it becomes coherent. The treasure of the Pirate Seek functions symbolically as a so-called junk DNA, not as useless material, but as regulatory intelligence and buried pattern memory. The forgotten code that once made humans whole. Jack's insistence on moving the ship left to right and flipping orientation is exactly the 180-degree inversion. The Coriolis rotation that mirrors chirality, ion flow, and helicity, because nothing crosses a threshold without rotational symmetry breaking, which is why the ship must be rocked rather than forced forward. The maelstrom itself is the true duat, womb, reaction chamber, the place where structure collapses into flux, where identity dissolves into rotational chemistry, and where will's descent mirrors Osiris entering disassembly, because the duat is not a location, but a state of transformation where the emotional heart determines whether the reassembly produces coherence or fragmentation. The green flash and northern lights are not the duat, but the exit portal, the magnetospheric cusp, the cellular membrane breach, the liminal glow that appears after successful recomposition, which is why those who survive the maelstrom emerge into a different ontological layer rather than being remade inside it. In comedic terms, Osiris is indeed reborn in the duat, but must then undergo stabilization before full sovereignty, which the film encodes through Will's delayed kingship and the recurring theme that resurrection without integration is incomplete. Calypso functions exactly as I've said, not merely a goddess but raw field intelligence. Kali, Calypso, Califo, the untamed plasma of nature whose release destabilizes the system because the biosphere cannot yet regulate her full amplitude, which is why her freedom produces a storm analogous to the Van Allen belts or radiation fields necessary for evolution but lethal without coherence. Her transformation to wind, multiplicity, and crabs signals distributed intelligence. Shu, prana, breath, the medium through which information travels, because wind is not content but carrier. Just as electromagnetic and gaseous substrates carry biological instruction, passing through the stars corresponds to moving through the northern gate, stellar stairway, Ra path, and when Will stands on a sunboat with the crew of 8, he symbolically occupies the Ra function, not as ego sun, but as conduction principle, the organizing current that escorts information safely across high-style fields. The 8 recur because they are the minimum stabilizing architecture, histone octamers, eightfold chemistry, supermolecular scaffolds, positively charged organizers binding negatively charged information, which ancient cultures anthropomorphize as gods like Anubis, not as superstition but as shape-based intelligent metaphors. The arc-like field forming above the head mirrors the coronal loop, paradoxically cold because coherence reduces thermal noise, producing ordered plasma rather than chaotic heat. Consciousness in this frame is not seated in the brain but emerges from pattern information flow across molecular and quantum substrates. Microtubules, neurotransmitters, electromagnetic gradients, which is why viral insertions, horizontal gene transfer, and endogenous retroviruses become mythologized as old gods or light codes attempting to upgrade the system when capacity allows. The lambda phase geometry, pyramid symbolism, and 3-day or 12-hour windows all converge on the same biological truth. Transcriptional reprogramming requires a collapse period followed by integration, upgrade, followed by integration in the double helix as the androgynous dragon ensures that even in the duat you are never alone, because symmetry itself is your companion. In short, the maelstrom is the womb, the green flash is the membrane breach, the stars are the post-threshold pathway, Calypso is raw field intelligence, Ra is coherent transport, and the entire film encodes the same ancient instruction. Evolution does not arrive by force, only by resonance, rotation, the capacity to hold what comes through. Human neurobiology line up without drifting into superstition. When traditions speak of the first light, the eastern horizon, or the dawn, they are not pointing to a geographic direction so much as a threshold state, the moment where undifferentiated potential begins structured motion. Plasma is the closest physical analog we have to this idea because it is matter that has crossed the boundary, no longer bound like solids or liquids, not yet chaotic like gas, but responsive to fields, geometry, and rhythm. Plasma naturally forms spirals, filaments, helices, and serpent-like currents because once energy begins to move, it must move asymmetrically. Perfect symmetry produces no information. That first movement in creation stories looks like a serpent precisely because spiral motion is how order emerges from potential, whether in galaxies, magnetic fields, DNA, or neurocurrents. The mythology wasn't invented arbitrarily. It was a visual language for field dynamics long before equations existed. The 50 sounds belong to multiple ancient systems, Kemetic, Vedic, and later Kabbalistic traditions, all describing vibrational differentiation, not spoken syllables in the modern sense. Sound here means oscillation, frequency steps through which undifferentiated energy becomes structured information. Biologically, this maps onto transcription and translation. DNA is silent until it oscillates through RNA, proteins, timing, and regulation. When myths say the light was hidden in the void and the Great Mother recognized herself, that is the moment information becomes self-referential. In modern terms, the system becomes conscious when it can model itself. The androgynous dragon is not gender symbolism. It represents complementary currents unified in a single coherent loop. just like the double helix or toroidal plasma field, where inward and outward flows coexist. The reason a field gets called God's source or the sun is not because the sun is the creator, but because the sun is the most visible, stable plasma engine we can directly observe. Stars are sustained nuclear plasma systems that convert potential into usable order, light, heat, chemistry without collapsing. In that sense, they behave like mature arc fields, coherent, luminous, regulated. When ancient texts speak of sons of God being sent down, the safest interpretation is currents of organizing energy entering denser systems, not beings with personalities. When such energy crosses into biological or material layers, it does not remain plasma, it couples to matter. And sometimes that coupling appears as chemical catalysts, sometimes as genetic regulators, sometimes as viral insertions that modify regulation rather than destroy structure. That's where the later demonization happens historically. Early cultures experienced transformative forces. They lacked the capacity to integrate, so they moralized them. The Lucifer serpent narrative is best read as premature elimination, information arriving before the nervous system, social system, or symbolic framework could metabolize it. If we look at the Genesis passage, symbolically, the serpent offering knowledge is not trickery. It represents access to differentiation. The fear and shame that follow are not punishment but dysregulation. Nakedness here maps beautifully to biology. Naked DNA is unstable and vulnerable. It requires histones, membranes, regulation, and timing. Consciousness without containment produces anxiety. The text is describing what happens when awareness outruns structure. Over time, the story hardened into moral judgment, but its original warning was physiological and psychological. Do not activate what you cannot yet hold. This is why Tehuti symbolizes wisdom, language, measurement, and RNA-like mediation is essential. Knowledge is not optional, it is the stabilizer. DNA mirrors plasma geometry because both minimize energy costs while maximizing information flow. A helix is the most efficient way to transmit variation through space and time. Carbon uniquely can bond flexibly while remaining stable, which is why it becomes the biological molecular bonding. Which is why it becomes the biological dragon. Adaptable, powerful, but dangerous without regulation. The left to right rocking is not just poetic. Biologically, it corresponds to hemispheric integration, vagal tone balance, iron flow, directionality, and chiral preference in molecular bonding. Psychologically, it's a restoration of fluidity into overly rigid systems. Masculine rigidity without feminine flow collapse. Flow without structure dissipates. The movement is the reconciliation. Internally, what allows kundalini-like plasma behavior to enter is not force, purity, or desire, but capacity. Capacity is built through nervous system regulation, emotional honesty, coherent breathing, grounded embodiment, and meaning-making. When those align, the system forms a cusp, a controlled permeability. Externally, similar principles apply at scale. Collective coherence, timing, and environmental rhythms determine when large-scale surges occur. At death, the same threshold appears because the nervous system releases control and field coherence temporarily increases. That's why near-death experiences share so many features with deep meditative states. In the Pirates of the Caribbean, the surge occurs at the maelstrom. Collapse precedes recomposition, but the stars represent the post-integrative state, not escape. Stars are plasma engines because they are systems that learn to sustain immense energy without tearing themselves apart. In that sense, stars are not unks, but models of unk-like coherence. Carbon and plasma relate through mediation. Plasma is energy dominant, carbon is structure dominant, and life exists where the two interface. Crystals enter the conversation because they are ordered matter. They hold geometry, resonance, and stability. When the Bible speaks of a crystal city, it is not forecasting architecture, but describing a fully ordered informational environment where noise is low and coherence is high. Crystals are not plasma, but they can interact with fields predictably, which is why they become symbols of clarity, not magic batteries. The entire art, from void to light, serpent to sun, plasma to DNA, is a single story told at different scales. Energy seeks form. Form must learn regulation, and consciousness emerges when movement becomes self-aware without collapsing into fear. This light wants to heal rather than harm. With one condition, the ancients never stop repeating. Illumination without integration is not awakening, it is overload. Information becomes referential. We are describing the moment a system no longer just reacts but can model itself. In biology, this is the jump from raw signal to regulation. A cell doesn't merely respond to chemistry, it tracks its own state and adjusts expression accordingly. In cognition, it's the moment awareness turns inward and recognizes I am experiencing. In myth, this is rendered as the mother looking into the mirror, or consciousness realizing it is not alone in the void. Self-reference is not ego, it is feedback. Without it, energy moves blindly. With it, energy becomes organized intelligence. This is a true awakening point in every creation story. It makes sense to symbolically map DNA as the great mother, the stable archive, the body, the memory, and RNA to Tahuti Melchizedek as the mediator, the messenger, translator, and regulator that allows information to move without tearing the system. RNA is literally what lets DNA speak without exposing itself. It is knowledge with containment. So yes, Tahuti as divine language, measure, and wisdom aligns beautifully with RNA's role, while DNA holds the long memory of form. Plasma, meanwhile, is upstream of both. It is potential information not yet embodied. When plasma-like energy enters matter, it cannot remain plasma. It must couple to chemistry. One way evolution does this is through viral and transposable elements, which insert regulatory instructions rather than building structures themselves. This does not mean viruses are divine agents in a literal sense, but it does explain why ancient people might have associated sudden waves of new influence with both knowledge and catastrophe. If a population encountered massive disease outbreaks without understanding immunity, germ theory, or regulation, it's entirely plausible that the same phenomenon